All right. Good evening. Welcome everyone here today at City Hall, and everyone watching all across the globe. We welcome you to the City of Cal and our second ever Dialogue for Peace and Progress. So the idea behind this is an event series where we will join the community and leaders and various perspectives to come for an evening together to have an honest conversation and dialogue about the various different things that impact multiple parts of our community. And so we have a very awesome panel for you all here tonight that we're excited to have a discussion about Black History Month and other relative topics to that. And so we're going to try to keep to our time tonight, so we're going to jump right into this thing. And so first, I would like to go through and introduce our panel. First, we will start out with, get it pulled up here. So first we have Ms. Jonnie Wilson. She is a licensed professional counselor, associate in clinical and mental health, and a nationally board certified counselor. She is certified in sexual assault outreach counselor at Hayes Caldwell Women's Center in San Marcos, Texas. Wilson has over 25 years of experience working in a professional environment, a strong advocate for marginalized students at Texas State University, mentoring adolescents and adults along with providing guidance and advising. She also has 25 years of experience working with specialized populations, women of color, veterans, adolescent girls, Black males, victims of sexual and race-based trauma, chronic illness, unplanned pregnancies, college students, LGBTQIA college students, and first-generation college students. In her community, she facilitated single-parent support groups for 7 years. Thank you, Ms. Wilson, for being here. Next, we will have Ms. Grace Castañeda, wife, mother, daughter, sister, auntie, educator, avid reader, and book collector, social justice advocate, and passionate human being. Mrs. Castañeda is married to her wonderful hubby, Ruben Castañeda, and the proud mother of Charles Bohannon, a 2013 Hayes High School graduate. Her family has resided in the Plum Creek community for over 16 years. She is a 93 Texas State University alumni. As a 14-year employee of Hayes CISD, she currently serves at Negley Elementary School in her 12th year as a classroom teacher. Mrs. Castaneda is a founding member of Cal Cultural Awareness. One of her passions is to be a voice for the voiceless, to help bring about positive changes in the lives of marginalized people in and around our community. Welcome, Ms. Castañeda. Thank you for being here. Let's see. I'm sorry, Grant, I messed you up, but now we're going to go to Aaron. Mr. Aaron Taylor. He is a Cal native, attends the University of Texas at Austin, where he will graduate this May with a BBA in Management Information Systems. He was an active student that embraced his MIS track, student organizations, and participated in programs based in New York City and Beijing, China. Aaron leverages his identity as a Black man, diverse global experiences, and welcoming personality to reach others and establish change. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Thank you for being here. And then lastly, of our virtual participants, we have Mr. David Bryant. Derrick David Bryant has been married to his lovely wife, Mary, for 20 years. He is the proud father of a 12-year-old daughter named, and Mr. Bryant, I'm going to allow you to pronounce that name.
Her name is Shekinah.
Beautiful. Love it, brother. Thank you. David wears many hats in the community. He serves as a City of Lockhart Council member for District 2, senior pastor of Arise Christian Ministries, and as a business owner. David recently hosted a successful event in December of 2020 entitled Black Voices in Caldwell County, a virtual discussion. Thank you, Mr. Bryant. We appreciate you taking the time to be here for us. All right. Let me get you back on track, Grant. Next, we have in person. I'll start here to my right, Mr. Richard Dixon. Mr. Dixon was born in Panama City, Panama, and moved to the U.S. at the age of 6. He graduated from Sonoma State University, the class of 1992, with a major in sociology and minor in kinesiology. Mr. Dixon made his way to Texas in August 2006 and currently works at the University of Texas at Austin. He is married to Karina Dixon, and they have 7 children between them, ranging in ages of 14 to 29 years, along with a granddaughter who is 18 months old and here with us today. Coach Dixon, as he is well known, played and coached football at every level except the pros. He currently serves as president of Cal Youth Football Organization, Go Invaders, established in 2008. Thank you, Coach Dixon, for being here. To my direct right here, we have Mr. Levi Griffith. He is currently a 16-year-old junior at Lehman High School. He has been attending virtually since last March 2020. He has attended Hemp Hill Elementary, Fuentes Elementary, and Chapa Middle School, and Lehman High School, all here in the great city of Kyle, Texas. Mr. Griffith has participated in the band program of both middle school and high school, and is currently participating in the powerlifting program as well. Thank you, Mr. Griffith, for being here today.
Thank you.
All right. Next, to my immediate left, we have Mr. Adrian Goodin. Mr. Goodin is an IT help desk technician for the city of Kyle, as well as an independent commercial and portrait photographer. He was born in Crockett, Texas, and raised in Corsicana, Texas for 18 years before moving to Central Texas, specifically San Marcos, to attend college at, once again, Texas State University, where he majored in computer information systems and business administration. Some of Mr. Goodin's interests include the obvious, technology and cameras, but also cars, music, and cooking. He is always looking for ways to be creative, help others, and create a better environment for the people around him, while also living an overall introverted lifestyle. If you want, you can follow him on Instagram at AdrianNHD. Thank you, Mr. Goodin, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and to my far left, we have Miss Vanessa Westbrook. Miss Westbrook is a resident of Kyle, Texas for 10 plus years, independent consultant, Hays County election judge, Hays County Historical Commission member, and chair of the African American Heritage Committee. She's a former lecturer at Texas State University and former executive director of the Calaboose Museum. With more than 35 years of experience in education, science, and engineering, Vanessa Westbrook has implemented programs and projects in public schools, universities, professional organizations, state and federal agencies, to name a few. Ms. Westbrook has a passion for engaging everyone at the discussion table to create innovative, emphatic solutions to defined problems and/or identify problems that need attention and remediation. Thank you, Ms. Westbrook, for being here. All right. We are moving over here to Mr. Marquet Curl. Marquet Curl is a senior pastor of the Rock Kyle. Pastor Curl attended the University of Texas and finished his undergraduate studies at Texas State University by earning a Bachelor of Applied Arts and Sciences degree with an emphasis on business management. He also earned a Bachelor of Theology from Kingdom Bible University, a Master of Arts in Organizational Leadership from Regent University, and is currently pursuing a Master's in Theology from Kingdom Bible University, with plans to begin a doctoral program in the near future. Pastor Curl is a vital pillar in Hays County by being a trailblazer and founder of several community organizations. Pastor Curl established the first chaplain program for the city of Kyle and the Kyle Police Department, where he now serves as the senior chaplain. He has also established the Impact Education Program in Hays CISD, which is the first of its kind, by mentoring and tutoring children in the Title I elementary schools, in addition to establishing the Vision in Progress organization at Texas State University for college students to learn and grow in their faith. Pastor Curl also established Allied Services of Kyle, ASK, which is an interfaith group that is focused on collaborating to support the spiritual and natural needs of the greater Kyle community. Pastor Curl is married to Marcy Curl, and they have 3 beautiful daughters and 2 adorable granddaughters. And Pastor Curl, I'll have you introduce those names as well.
Oldest daughter is Morgan, granddaughter Kadea, middle daughter is Nadia, youngest daughter is Jaden, and youngest granddaughter is Madeline.
Fantastic. Thank you, Pastor Curl. We appreciate you being here again.
Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, we have Mr. Travis Mitchell. Travis Mitchell is a small business owner, entrepreneur, and is the current mayor of our great city of Kyle, Texas. A native Texan, Travis met his wife, Corey, at Texas A&M University before moving to the Austin region in 2007 to start a family. Travis and Corey have 3 elementary school-aged sons and a dog named Jack. Thank you so much, Mayor, for being here and participating. We appreciate you. All right. And I guess I didn't introduce myself, but my name is Dex Ellison, current Kyle City Council member, 2 terms here in Kyle. Thank you all for having me this evening and being your host and moderator of the ceremonies tonight. So we're going to jump right into this. We have a few different things I'd like to talk to the audience about. We will have some audience participation pieces as well this evening, which I assume will probably be displayed on the screen as well, where we will be getting your input. There will be a website for you to log in, and we'll be providing a code for you to log in and participate and give us some feedback on a couple of questions tonight. So we look forward to getting that feedback, and we hope our audience is able to participate in that. All right. So we're going to first jump right into the first conversation starter and questions. So, of course, tonight we are in our 5th day of Black History Month. And so first, I want to, if it would be all right, let's go ahead and jump into the video to give us a little bit of background and the origins of Black History Month. And then we're going to open up the first question to our audience and participation. And then we'll get into our panel discussion on that topic.
Black History Month, also known as African American History Month in the U.S., is an annual observance in Canada, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and the United States. It began as a way for remembering important people and events in the history of the African diaspora. It is celebrated annually in the United States and Canada in February, as well as in the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and the Republic of Ireland in October. The precursor to Black History Month was created in 1926 in the United States, when historian Carter G. Woodson and the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History announced the 2nd week of February to be Negro History Week. This week was chosen because it coincided with the birthday of Abraham Lincoln on February 12th and of Frederick Douglass on February 14th. Both of which dates Black communities had celebrated together since the late 19th century. From the event's initial phase, primary emphasis was placed on encouraging the coordinated teaching of the history of American Blacks in the nation's public schools. The first Negro History Week was met with a lukewarm response, gaining the cooperation of the Departments of Education of the states of North Carolina, Delaware, and West Virginia, as well as the city school administrations of Baltimore and Washington, D.C. Despite this far from universal acceptance, the event was regarded by Woodson as one of the most fortunate steps ever taken by the association, and plans for a repeat of the event on an annual basis continued apace. By 1929, the Journal of Negro History was able to note that with only 2 exceptions, officials with the state departments of educations of every state with considerable Negro population had made the event known to that state's teachers and distributed official literature associated with the event. Churches also played a significant role in the distribution of literature in association with Negro History Week during the initial interval, with the mainstream and Black press aiding in the publicity effort. Negro History Week was met with enthusiastic response. It prompted the creation of Black history clubs, an increase in interest among teachers, and interest from progressive whites. Negro History Week grew in popularity throughout the following decades, with mayors across the United States endorsing it as a holiday. Black History Month was first proposed by Black educators and the Black United Students at Kent State University in February 1969. The first celebration of Black History Month took place at Kent State 1 year later, the whole month of February in 1970. 6 years later, Black History Month was being celebrated all across the country in educational institutions, centers of Black culture, and community centers both great and small. When President Gerald Ford recognized Black History Month during the celebration of the United States bicentennial, he urged Americans to, quote, seize the opportunity to honor the too often neglected accomplishments of Black Americans in every area of endeavor throughout our history. What Carter G. Woodson would say about the continued celebrations of Black History Month is unknown, but he would smile on all the honest efforts to make Black history a field of serious study and provide the public with thoughtful conversation and celebration. To you.
Thank you. So that is just one to give a general background and understanding for the entire audience of the origins of Black History Month, and as brief as we could on our time. And so we will open up the first question to the audience to participate. And I do not have my screen, so I'm trusting that we're getting that popped up there. Yes, bingo, wonderful. There is the website, visit menti.com, and then you will enter that code 9022955. And certainly our audience here in person can also do that on your smartphones. Visit that website, you'll put in that code, and so our participation will be one word to describe what Black History Month means to you. So we'll give the audience the time to do that, and so we're going to roll right into the panel and allow them to start off their discussion. So as we discussed, we have our paddles here today. One side says, I choose to speak up. The other side is blank, which means you choose to listen for a moment. And so I'm going to have my panel to go ahead and raise your paddles on your choice this evening to start off the topic. My virtual audience. All right. Okay, all right. We've got some folks that are ready to talk, so let's do it. So we'll start this off with, what does Black History mean to you? What have been your experiences with Black History Month? And we're going to start here with one of, so we have some veterans from our last panel, so I'm going to start it off with them. So Ms. Westbrook, we'll have you lead the discussion tonight.
Okay, thank you. The question is, what does Black history mean to you? And as I thought about that, the first thing that popped into my head was I was going to say history, the idea of history. But this morning I was looking at TV and I actually saw a presentation on BET where they were asking, I guess, staff, what did Black history mean to them? And I heard someone say, reflection and respect for those who have come before us. And I thought, how fitting. As African Americans, we were left out of history for a very, very long time. And as we begin to add history in many cases, there were gaps. And the big reason for that was we actually didn't have a way of documenting anything because there was a time when we couldn't read and write in this country. And that added to the idea that there was not going to be any documentation of anything we did. And if we did do something, it was basically that credit was stolen from us. So with that in mind, as we think now about the ability to be educated and to be able to write documents and to publish, we are now starting to go back and gather information about things that happened a very long time ago, 100 years ago, 150 years ago, and found out indeed that we were very present at that time. And there were a lot of things going on. We just didn't have the tools to document it. And so now that we can, we are. So when I think of Black history, I think of, again, respecting the past and reflecting the past and now bringing the past to light so that others can get that information and we can pass it on. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Westbrook. Way to start off the discussion. I'm going to turn here to Pastor Curl.
Thank you. So when I think about the question, what is Black history? I guess the word that would come to mind for me would be frustration. I would say frustration because as a young African-American man growing up in this country, understanding that history can be shaped based upon the lens in which it is spoken through or spoken from. And so unfortunately, there's a lot of history that doesn't come from the perspective of an African-American male in this country. And so for us, it's frustration because through the process of colonization and chattel slavery, the history and identity was actually taken away from us, even to going to our last names. And so we have been cut off from our history. Therefore, most African Americans feel a disconnect. And even though we celebrate in the month of February, it is our opportunity for the world to kind of learn a little bit of history about the plight of blacks or African Americans in this country. However, it's not history to us because it's something that we live every single day of our lives and our ancestors have lived. And so for me, when I think about Black History Month, it's more of frustration based upon just how things have happened over time. You look at the video, 50 years ago, we began to celebrate Black history. But what about the hundreds of years prior to that? So for me, I would say Black History Month represents a little frustration.
Thank you, Pastor Curl. Certainly appreciate that response. We're going to go up here and get our virtual panelists in. Let's go with Ms. Wilson.
Yes, thank you. I thought a lot about this question, and what I came up with was resistance. This is something that we have a history of doing. And I bring that up because I grew up in the 1960s in California. And even though I was very young, I didn't know what was going on at the time. I lived down the street from the Black Panthers headquarters, and I lived right around the street from the Nation of Islam Mosque. I saw all of these things happening in my neighborhood changing, but I didn't understand what was going on. And it wasn't until I came to college and I really was on this quest of knowing my Black identity that I found out what was really going on and what had happened. And it prompted me to get a double major in English and history and a minor in women's studies, because again, I didn't even know who I was as a woman. But because I have learned the resistance that Black people have done for many of years, not just starting now with the Black Lives Matter movement, but there is a history of us resisting what has been what we are supposed to do and what we do in the meantime. I think it's very important that our students and our people know that we come from resistance, we come from persistence, we come from resilience. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Thank you for your thoughts on that. Next, I'm going to go to Mr. Bryant. If you want to share your thoughts on what Black history means to you and your experiences with that.
Yes, sir. Just two words come to mind. The first is eagerness. Growing up here in the state of Texas, attending school, in the elementary school, I remember waiting for Black History Month to come around, because then I could see people that looked like me. I can see the history will come alive because I could identify with Langston Hughes, Martin Luther King. So one, I was eager for Black history as a young child. Now it's a point of education. Educating the people around me, educating myself first and foremost, but then also my sphere of influence. So educating my community.
Oh, thank you, sir. Appreciate that feedback on that. Next, we're going to go to Mr. Dixon.
Well, thank you. To me, the word that comes to mind when I think about it is discovery. Being a Panamanian immigrant coming to the United States at 6 years old, I wasn't raised to look at identities. I was raised to just be who I am. And the one thing that I cherish most of that is my mom, my grandmother, and my aunt just teaching me how to be a good person and how to treat people the right way. And coming to the United States and living here in California is where I was mainly raised most of the time. It was one of those things, discovering that there's actually more people who have identity issues, who are trying to find out what we are, what they are, what is our purpose and things like that, where I was just going around nonchalantly thinking that, we're all good, we're all equal. You know, that's the way my household was. And to that day, in going to college and learning and just discovering the different things, sitting down at a lunch with just different people and listening to conversations that had to deal with my color, had to deal with who I thought I was or who I think I am or whatever. It was kind of like interesting to me. I got compelled in it. That's why I took sociology. Thought I was going to do a business major, but I changed to sociology because I wanted to know why people think the way they do. And in studying that, it was really fascinating to me to see that there is some disconnects going on because of what was mentioned earlier. We don't know. We didn't know. History books that we were taught, it's not in there. You know, it's not in there. And unless you do some deep diving, you're not going to find it. So discovery is the word that comes to my mind.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Well said. All right, we're going to turn back here to our virtual panelists. Mrs. Castañeda, I believe you had your choose to speak up.
Yes, sir. For me, I live Black history every day. And when I think about my son, Charles, who is a 2017 graduate of Hayes High School, he lives Black history every day. I believe that he is our future and he will continue to make Black history. I know that you asked that question and you asked also that we be concise, so I had to type up a reflection. Strength would be my word. No matter what we go through, no matter what is pushed upon us, we rise, we stand. We are strong people, and no matter what is thrown our way from the summer, from before that, we rise. While this month is what we learn, we get to learn about our accomplishments and our contributions as African Americans and that they have made to this country. It is also a time to reflect. It is a time for us to bow our heads. It is also a time to shed our tears. For me, Black History Month, I cry quite a bit because I am going through that process of self-discovery as well, learning my family history, learning the history of our country, and wanting so desperately for our children in our schools to learn our histories as well. We cannot fully celebrate Black history without also acknowledging the strange fruit hanging from the poplar tree. It is so important to know the history that has come before us so that we do not repeat it. It is so important that we educate not ourselves as adults, but our children, and have truthful conversation, rewrite our history books, rewrite the textbooks, put everyone in the textbooks. That's what it means to me.
Wow.
Nervous. Thank you.
Oh, no, beautiful. Beautifully said, Ms. Castañeda. Yes, sir, Mr. Taylor, looks like you're eager to jump into the conversation. Tell us what Black history means to you and your experiences with that.
All right, thank you. I guess to piggyback a little bit off of Ms. Vanessa, to me, it's really, I guess the reflection and bringing, I guess, history of Black people and looking on how it has shaped my my racial identity, and which is, how I view myself, how people see me, the world sees me, and how I go about my day-to-day interactions. And I kind of just digest that information and see how we can, I guess, teach others and make change in the future, and kind of like Ms. Grace said, not repeat things and kind of just move forward.
Well said. Thank you. Let's see. I think we heard from everyone on our virtual panel. Mr. Goodin, I believe I saw your paddle up as well.
Yes. I think my word would probably be totality. Specifically, like Mr. Dixon said, discovery was a big part of Black history because oftentimes we're not told the entire story. And it's easy to frame history in a certain way if you don't tell the whole story. And we're learning more about, even though we know about the famous figures, MLK and Rosa Parks and Harriet Tubman, there's a lot about those figures in history that we didn't find out in our history books that shaped their character a lot more than what we were told about them. And even characters that were painted in a certain way, I say characters because I didn't know them, we never met them. But those figures in history, like Malcolm X, were always painted in certain ways that made them really polarizing, when in those times in history, they were actually a lot more relatable than history books would paint them to be. And a lot of them were a lot more similar than history books also paint them to be. So I think learning about Black history in totality not only sheds a different light on Black history, but it shows that Black history is not just a subsidiary of American history, that Black history is a big part of American history. Black history is, it's not a side quest, it's the main story. And to kind of wrap it up, totality is important because it's easy to make a history look completely militant and completely, almost make it seem like it's wrong to chase a knowledge of your own history when you don't tell the whole story. Because a lot of times it's painted in a way where it makes your history look like it's finished. And Black history is always continuous, and telling it in totality displays that continuousness fully.
Oh, well said, Mr. Gooden. Did I catch everyone that had their panel up wishing to speak? Did I miss anyone? Are there any of those that chose to listen at first have any comments or thoughts? Okay, well, great discussion. Let's get into the results of our audience participation piece, if we can get that up on the screen. So these are some of the words we heard from our audience. All right, we see a number of them here. I'll give the panel a moment here to read through those. All right. And I'll ask for paddles again. Anybody have any thoughts or reflections on what they see from what the audience has participated with? Okay. And just want to, in case anybody doesn't know, the larger the word, the more it was used. So multiple people might have used that term. All right, we have here, here. And then I'm looking at my virtual panelists. Anybody have any thoughts on that? Ms. Wilson, Ms. Castañeda, Mr. Bryant, Mr. Taylor, choose to listen. All right, choosing to listen. And then I believe I saw choosing to speak all up here and choosing to speak here. Okay, we're going to go with Mr. Griffith. We'll start off with your thoughts on that.
Sorry.
You're good.
One word that really spoke out, it's a smaller word, it's the beacon. I was looking through it and I saw beacon. And I forgot who it was, but somebody said that they looked forward to, this month every year, to expand upon, the history and, their knowledge of it, and like just feeling relatable, and I saw a beacon and I was just, it hit me. It was like, this month is a beacon for, like Blacks all over the world, Black people, and not just Black people, Indigenous people overall, people of different races, people, different ethnicities all over the world, and as a white, younger person, I go through life, I guess just not really expanding upon that, I never really took into consideration the full depth of what this month meant for people. And up until really this past year, it never hit me. And when it did, I guess just enforced and encouraged me to just be more open-minded to this and be more insightful about what actually happened. The history of everything that happened in this country, not just this country, but the world, with, everything that happened in slavery, and the change of it, the turnover, everything about it. And it encouraged me to want to dive in deeper and deeper and learn so much more. And, a part of it makes me, feel sorry. And, it made me feel like, why? It made me question so much. But then I looked further and I was like, there's so much strength in any and everybody that went through that. And it just encouraged me to, keep fighting on with, alongside everybody, and like just be compassionate, I guess, just form that passion for everybody. And, I really don't know how much I have left to say, but, I don't know, it encouraged me in a way, reading about that and learning from it.
Thank you, Mr. Griffith. Thank you for your insight on that. Certainly appreciate that. I'm going to go up to I'll bounce back and forth. We'll go to our virtual panel here. Let me see those paddles again. I think we had Ms. Wilson.
I was looking at the word ancestors because a lot of times when I'm contemplating on voting rights or the rights and the liberties that we have, I think about our ancestors and what they went through for us to do that, to be able to vote, to have the freedom that we do have, even though it's mixed with a lot of stuff that's going on that's racist and everything that's going on, we still have to recognize what our ancestors went through. And education for me has been the thing that really taught me my identity, because a lot of times growing up, and I'm sure a lot of you can identify with this, that you don't get that recognition that you should get about Black history, or you may not read about it. And for me, I grew up military. And so the first thing was the country, the United States, being patriotic. And I didn't learn it in my household growing up, and I didn't learn it in the books growing up. And so there was a part of me, especially when I moved to Texas, that wanted to really know about what's wrong with my Black color, because that's where I find the most racist things that were said to me is when I came to Texas. It wasn't in California. So I went on this quest of finding out what's that all about. And so when I landed at Texas State, it was Southwest Texas at the time, I started reading books. I started reading anything I could get my hands on in the library. And then I was a little bit more militant back then. And what I did was, in an open forum, I said, Texas State doesn't care about Black folks and they don't have a Black history class. And in the forum, I did not know this, it was the chair of the history department. And he told me that I need to come to his office, and I did. And when I went to his office, I ended up getting people to sign a petition. So that's why there's a Black history class at Texas State University as we speak. I remember in the 90s, I was one of the first to take that class because I wanted to know more about what is going on in our lives that that is so much disdain and hatred against Black folks, and I learned so much that I ended up going to University of Missouri. I got accepted there and got my master's degree in African history and African American history because I wanted to learn even more. And so now what I do is I pour back what I have learned, the education I have learned, I give it to young people. Anybody who wants to hear about Black history, talk to me, I'll tell you about it. That is what our ancestors did orally to us. And so I feel like it is my purpose in life to give back in that way.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Thank you. Well said. We'll come back here to our in-person panel. Yes, sir. That's the girl.
Sure. I think the word obviously it was the biggest word on the screen, but I think it's probably the most important word, which was education. When we talk about education, of course, we have to talk about systems and how things are taught in our country. I think, Adrian said something very important. He said totality. And unfortunately, whenever we educate even about history, it's oftentimes told from a beneficial perspective of the writer, which means that there are things that get left out that are very important when it comes to educating about the history. I've been blessed. I'm blessed to be married for many years, and my wife and I tend to forget the stories sometime. I'll forget. She can have a different version of the events than I may have. And she feels that her version is correct. And I feel that my version is correct until I acquiesce to her that her version is correct in order to keep the peace in the house. Every wise man knows that. That's how you stay married. But unfortunately, in our country, when it comes to history, it's spoken of or spoken about from a perspective that may not be the total story, the true story. There are some atrocities, there are some very, very bad things that have happened, but that's part of history. So we don't get a chance to tell the filtered version of history versus the unfiltered truth of these are things in our country, because then you rob people of knowing some of the things that happened that can help them connect to their past and their ancestry. So if I think that the thing about education is it has to be in totality, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Oh, well said, Pastor Jerome. We'll go back up to, I believe, Ms. Castañeda, you wanted to speak on the words that we had on the screen?
Yes, sir, sure. Some of the words that stood out to me, culture. Culture in our hair, our clothing, the food we eat, the music we listen to. During Black History Month, pretty much throughout the year, I rock my authentic self with my wear, how I do my hair, whether it's braided, whether it's in its natural fro, with identity, positive self-love, with excellence in that we are the original creators, kings and queens. Being a military brat, I too grew up in Texas and other places beyond, and we didn't see the, if you will, the separation or the issues that of people not celebrating or wanting to, what is the word that I'm coming to? As a military brat, it was country first. We served. We didn't ask questions. I didn't know who my parents voted for when it came to presidential elections. Commander-in-chief is our commander-in-chief. We went to school, we learned. When it came to school, there was that sense of shame and isolation with Black History Month, in that being the only person of color, Black person of color in your class at times, you kind of would shrink a little bit. We talked quite a bit about being an enslaved people, and I know that we were more than slaves. We came before that. So just learning as an adult with reflection of who am I? Reading through books, reading literature, and having conversations in safe spaces. And so for me, that's what I want to create with our students, is that it is okay to learn about history. It's okay to learn about Black history, other people's history as well. We just need to get it into our textbooks so that we don't have to isolate into a single month. It should be Black history all day, every day.
Well said. And actually, I know some others wanted to speak on the words here, but that actually is a good transition into our next video, and I want to make sure we're staying on time here. And certainly, panel, if you'd like to speak on those terms that we saw on the screen when I open it back up, you certainly can. But we're going to go ahead and play our next video, and then I want to get the reflection of the panel on that video.
Every February, the United States and Canada recognize Black History Month, but its founder hoped for a different future for Black history. Carter G. Woodson, the Harvard-educated historian who established Black History Month, hoped Black history would become so ingrained in American history that Black History Month would be unnecessary. But in 1926, when he began Negro History Week, the second week in February, he had two objectives: to prove to white America that Blacks had played important roles in the creation of America and deserved to be treated equally as citizens, and second, to increase the visibility of Black life and history, at a time when the media was portraying the Black community negatively with anti-Black racist imagery, like Black caricatures, blackface minstrel shows, and films like the 1927 hit The Jazz Singer. In 1976, Woodson's Association for the Study of American Life and History, which sets the annual theme for every Black History Month, lobbied for Black History Week to become a month, and got President Gerald Ford to make the first proclamation. Every president since then, except for Donald Trump, has proclaimed the new theme annually. Congress officially recognized Black History Month in 1986. Black History Month is often controversial, with calls for Whiteness History Month or Confederate History Month, to others, including some Black people, saying it's outlived its usefulness or that it's antithetical to American values. But despite the official designation, there are no federal requirements for teaching Black history in school curriculums. And on an average, less than 9% of history class is spent on Black history. In some states, it's completely ignored.
Hey, thanks for watching.
Thank you. So lots to unpack in that. All right. part of the reason in showing that video, you kind of reiterated some of the things from the first video, but also to kind of talk about, as it said at the beginning, the thought process behind why Black History was originally started and the goal for what it was to happen in the future. And I thought Ms. Castañeda made a really good point to transition into that topic. So we wanted, the next part of this first section, I want to talk about the relevance of Black History Month today. And is it something that is still relevant? Should we still celebrate it as we do? Or is there need to be any adjustment to that? And so I'd like to get the panel's thought on that. So let's hear it, panel. Let's get those paddles up first. All right. Okay. Miss Wilson, Mr. Taylor, did you have? Okay. All right. We're good to go. I think I have everybody. So is there anybody very eager to start this one off? All right, Ms. Westbrook, we'll go with you.
Okay. Well, because I didn't get to speak on the last one, so. So in thinking about this, one of the things that was said is that there was never a federal mandate in regards to Black History Month, African American History Month, which is so true, and it's just left up to the devices of the community. Community will greatly engage in Black History Month if something is being put together by the members in that community. If there's nothing being put together by the members of that community, then it's a month that just is thought of as maybe it's Valentine's Day for the most part. So, and I say that because this particular month of February 2021, a group of citizens here in Hayes County have made a very big effort to really promote Black History Month throughout Hayes County. We started off with a commissioner court proclamation, went through all of the cities and got proclamations, as well as been doing activities throughout the month that we're inviting the public to come out to. So with that in mind, when the community makes a push, because it's like a local control thing right now, lots can happen. But if there isn't a community doing a push, then perhaps nothing will happen. So keep that in mind. The other thing I wanted to mention was that when we looked at the list of different words that came up, roots, identity, and knowledge popped up. And I'm going to connect that to this question in regards to Black History Month is a time for us to look at perhaps the roots of our families. We don't know, well, some of us don't know much about our families past, 1910 or something like that. And so Black History Month reminds us sometimes that perhaps this is a great time to find out more about my family, where I came from. And in finding that out, you'll find out a lot of stuff. The good, the bad, and the ugly, can we say. I often say that in history classes because the whole story needs to be told in order for you to get a true understanding. And so you'll find out that it may not be that you're all completely Black, but there's other people in your family. And so how do you deal with that in regards to this idea of Black History Month? But knowing who you are makes a great deal in regards to knowing where you're going to go, what you're going to do, and accepting others, which is something that I think African Americans are supposed to do. We're supposed to accept everybody, but they don't necessarily accept us. So it's a different tightrope you have to walk. And if you have children, you almost have to teach that. It's two sides of the coin. But I digress just a little bit. Let me get back on this. The idea of knowledge, being able to have information at hand, knowing that what was the reason behind George Washington Carver, the peanut man. Nope, he didn't discover peanut butter. He discovered a way to put nitrogen back into the soil so that sharecroppers would be able to yield high crops, thus getting themselves out from under the person where they were abided to because they didn't have land of their own. And so he was trying to find a way to help the people, his people, for the most part. So those are the kind of things that we need to make sure people understand and know about. And we need to know that there were a lot, the good, the bad, and the ugly. The big thing we have right now is folks who are saying, I don't know if I want to take the COVID-19 vaccine, because you know what they did to black people in the past, which is valid, mind you. But at the same time, the key people who were responsible for coming up with that vaccine was led by an African-American woman. So in that context, we need to know the whole story all the time, the whole story. And so I think as we think about the whole story, the knowledge, the history, the identity, that gives us a place in regards to, is Black History Month a valid thing? I think it is, for the most part. And it's something that will give us more to look for in our years to come, for our young people to continue this process of finding out who did what and our role in our society, which is in America, it's our society. So I've heard people say that it's Black History Month, but it's African Americans in America History Month, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Ms. Westbrook. So I want to get in, I believe I saw Mr. Mitchell, your sign up for Choose to Speak. We haven't heard from you yet, so I want to give you an opportunity, sir.
Sure. Thank you, council member. Yeah, that's interesting, multiple comments that I wanted to follow up just from what you said, because you, Ms. Westbrook, you said kind of exactly what I was thinking. The word that came to mind for me was awareness. And that's obviously because I come from a little bit of a different perspective on a holiday, because it wasn't something that was in my consciousness, which I think is the word you used. And the more years that pass, the older I get, the more I start to look at my own history and see the world as being a little bit bigger than the world that maybe I was raised in. The more I realize just how important things like Black History Month are, because they force awareness upon people who otherwise would prefer not to be aware. You know, and that's probably the roots of where you know, a lot of my personal experience is that many of the types of holidays that we discuss here and have been discussing are not holidays or seasons where many people think very much of it. And the local engagement is really what has been the difference. It's been kind of the key differentiator in my life, is being in a place to receive, but also having willing people in my life who engage me and who bring up the conversations so that I can have that dialogue. And so it's just, it's really great, but that local effort seems to be what is helping people like me and others, many others in this community, to learn and be educated. So yeah, it's very good.
Well said, Mr. Mitchell, well said. I want to go up to our virtual panelists. I believe, Mr. Bryant, you had your paddle up for wishing to speak, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct. Thank you very much. I'll try to be brief. Just want to make 2 points. The first being, there's an old proverb that says, when an elder in our community passes away, a library goes with them. And it was alluded to earlier that a lot of times in our culture, African-American culture, the elders would tell the oral history. The history would be passed down from generation to generation. And at some point that we were forced to stop doing that for many different reasons. In some families it continued. But without Black History Month, some people will not learn about Black history. Some people that are African-American will not learn without Black History Month. So that's one why I feel it's still needed. Second point I want to make is that it's needed because when people say Black Lives Matter and you get the response, all lives matter, that means Black History Month is still needed. When you see the polarism going on with the monuments and things and the flags, a Confederate flag, that means Black history is still needed. I mean, we haven't done our job as far as educating the community on the importance of everyone mattering and the contributions that Black Americans, that African Americans, that Black people in general across the world, across the diaspora, have made to the world civilization, period. So yes, Black history is still needed.
Well, thank you, Mr. Bryant. Well said. Can I get the, for those that haven't spoke, yes, Mr. Taylor, I was hoping we'd get you back in here. Go ahead, sir.
Just to add on to what Mr. Bryant just said, it said it in the video. I guess people start believing that, you know, Black History Month has outlived its use, and I agree with you, Mr. Bryant, that, you know, it's still needed because, you know, I guess being in the college classroom and interacting with young students a lot, you know, just a year ago, people, you know, talking to you saying, "Oh, I just realized," you know, after, you know, the murder of George Floyd, you know, people were saying, "I never knew all this stuff," and they, you know, people are still, you know, seeing stuff on TV, and it's a shame that, you know, that's how they're introduced to this, but, you know, there's still more education that is needed.
Well said, Mr. Taylor. And that is one thing that's exciting about this panel is we have a number of different perspectives, and it's actually a younger panel than our first time around, and that was on purpose to kind of get that perspective when it talks to history. Mr. Goodin, I would like to get your responses on this.
Yeah, and it's funny because that question actually, it matches with the word that I chose from the participation event or participation exercise, which was explain. And I think a lot of the purpose of Black History Month now is to explain things and explain them fully. And that Black history now is more focused on telling the more intricate details of the highlighted events that we've always learned. And I think that's probably my favorite thing about Black history now is because it teaches people why systems were allowed to continue for as long as they did, and why things just can't be stopped because things changed. And I think another big thing about Black History Month now is that things are presented in a more real way. A lot of times, and this is just in my personal experience, but in the history books, all the photos of events in Black history were in black and white, even though some of them happened in the 60s. And, you know, my parents were born in 1970. So it makes it seem older than what it is. And that didn't even click in my head until maybe 3 or 4 years ago. It's like, wow, I saw a picture of, you know, MLK in black and white, but I'm sure at that time there was a color camera somewhere around there. Somewhere there could have been a color version of this photo. And it just, I think now Black history shows more little nuances like that and makes them apparent to people that, you know, even like myself, that may have glossed over those just small little intricacies of a system that is still new to me, and that everyone's still learning about. It provides that kind of unveiling of what Black history really was. So yeah, Black History Month and the teachings of Black history are absolutely still relevant and still necessary, and they're not finished yet.
Well said, Mr. Goodin. I'm going to go down here. Mr. Dixon, get you in the conversation.
Black History Month is needed. It needs to be heightened because if you look at it from an internal standpoint, as far as, like for me, the generation that I was raised in, seen, not heard. You know, you sit down at the table with your parents, your mom, and they're talking. You can't speak. Eat your food. So just from the Black family as a whole, there has to be some education because, as it was stated earlier, the story hasn't been told. You know, you really didn't tell me what was really going on or what happened, you know, and I always look at myself first. You know, when this conversation started happening, when we talk about Blacks and what's going on, I look at myself first. My name is Richard Alexander Dixon, born and raised in Panama, a country that speaks Spanish. Where does my name come from? Why am I a Dixon? And, you know, you look at, you know, there's a crest that's out there with the name Dixon on it, the Dixon crest out of England. Is that where I'm from? Or, more importantly, you know, I played football, and I thought everybody with the last name Dixon who was on the football field was my cousin. You know, Hanford Dixon, you know, oh, right, I'm gonna make it. You know, so understanding that was a challenge for me, and I think, again, looking first at yourself. You got to educate yourself. You got to find out why ask those questions, you hit it right on the head. Explain to me why, and not be afraid to have that tough conversation, because it is good, it is bad, it is ugly, you know. And if you're not ready to have those conversations, which in the most part, our nation is not, you know, they're not ready to have that conversation, because there's things that have happened, you know, just within my own family that I'm finally discovering now, you know, and wow, that's all I can say is wow. All this stuff happened. So yeah, it's needed, because you know, I coach football, love it. I don't think that my development would have happened without it, because some people were put in my path that challenged me. And the 3 words I use, which you very well know, is alignment, assignment, execution. Alignment. Where am I at? What do I need to do? Assignment. Where am I? How I'm going to do it? Where are the tools? Where are the references? Where do I talk to? Who are my mentors? Who is going to assist me? Are you finding that? And then going out there and actually doing it. You know, not being afraid. You know, football referenced a lot, and you know, I heard a very prominent football player who used to play for the Texans say, in a middle of a football competition, I only fear God. And that sat with me when I heard that. It made me challenge myself, because we all have our internal fears, you know, and I've always challenged myself. Even the job that I got, I was told, you sure you want to apply for that job at the University of Texas? And I never understood why, until I got hired at the University of Texas, you know. And so we have to explain, so that way we get the full story, because his story didn't work. It's putting us in a bad spot, and so we need to make sure that we get the right story, the full story, so we can learn how to deal with it. And as I tell people, I'm gonna tell you like it is, and then we deal with it, the good, the bad, the ugly. You may like me, but know one thing, at least you're not gonna have to go around and say, was he really talking the truth? Go find out, I challenge you. So it's needed, it's needed.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. We're going to go up to our virtual panelists. Did we have anyone up there that wanted to make some comments? All right, Mrs. Wilson.
I just wanted to add, by talking a little bit about family, simply because when I think about family, I think about our ancestors who came over the way they came over, and how they could be from different African tribes, but once they got together, they considered themselves family. And that is something that is so unique, I believe, to Black culture, is that you don't have to be my cousin, but you're my family, you know, and we have that with us that stems from slavery, that we were separated from each other, but yet we grew to have family. And I think that is something that is so unique that you may not even find in other cultures, but we are family no matter who you are, and we help each other. And so I just wanted to add that to the mix as well.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Appreciate that. Go over here, Pastor Carroll.
Sure. Just echo the sentiment that everyone else has stated, that of course it's still very much needed. And it's very necessary, because there is no American history without Black history. Black history is American history. There would be no United States of America if it was not for Blacks in this country. So I think that it's important for 2 different perspectives. It's important for non-Blacks to become educated about things that they may not have learned growing up, may not have been exposed to, based upon history books in school, friendship circles that people you may have been around growing up. So there's things you don't know. It's also important for us as people of color, because as Blacks, as African Americans, we suffer from an identity crisis. We suffer from an identity crisis because we were stripped away from our home, so we don't know our identity. We don't know our heritage. Ms. Westbrook stated that, I can go back to great-grandparents, and that's as far back as I can go in my understanding of family. And so there's a big piece of us that's missing. Even in our country, when it comes to identity, we don't know who we are, we just get told who we are. So there was a period of time where we were Negroes, then we were colored. Are we black or are we African American? So there's got to be a continuation of even self-discovery for us as a race to understand our identity, because without knowing who we are, we're lost and we're struggling trying to figure out who we are. And it's hard trying to figure out who you are in a country that has not accepted you from the beginning, but benefited from you. So I think that, yes, it's definitely important and very much needed, and will continue to be even more needed in the climate of our country today.
Very powerful words. Thank you, Mr. Curl. So I know we could probably continue on that topic, but I'm going to transition into the next one because it seems to be already a big part of it, and that is the family. So the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, which was, as we saw in the video, the group started by Dr. Carter G. Woodson and his colleagues at the time. Every year they have a theme that they release. And this year's theme, 2021, was the Black family: representation, identity, and diversity. And so one thing is for sure, we all have family, whatever that means to us, and however that impacts us. So I wanted the panel to talk a little bit about what that means to you as an individual, your background, your family, identifying as Black or not, the identity of your family, and how your lineage is represented, and your thoughts on diversity. So I'll go ahead and get the paddles back up. Hold them up for me for a second so I can get in my memory who has. All right. Okay, cool. Sounds good. Okay, let's go with Mr. Bryant on this one. We'll have you start off the conversation.
Sure. Thank you very much. I think family is very important to me as an individual because, that's the unit that I knew. My faith is rooted in Jesus Christ. And so I also understand the upbringing that even with my ancestors, even when we talk about family, that there were some songs. I don't want to preach, but I feel a preach coming on. There were some songs that got us through, through adversity, while we were in the cotton fields, while we were being beat, while we were picketing, there were songs that got us through. And it was our faith in God that would say, I believe sooner will be coming a better day, and I look over the mountain, there's a better day coming, talking about Moses, talking about Jordan, there's a better day in my personal family. That was a constant, knowing to look to God, knowing to where my faith lies. And that's something I try to teach to my daughter now, that we have faith in God and in Christ, no matter what we go through. There's, one of my mentors says this: if you do right, sure enough, right's going to do you. Let me say it again. If you do right long enough, sure enough, right's going to do you. And so you reap what you sow. So looking at family, looking at diversity, and then also identifying where I come from. People talk about, okay, well, yeah, we don't know where we come from. Essentially, people say, we all came from Africa. Well, there's like 58 countries in Africa. Which country is it, right? And so having that conversation, that even in my own family, asking my grandmother on my maternal side, that learning that one of my grandfathers came from Morocco, right? My great-grandfather. So being able to identify where I come from is to find that identity. And then ultimately, my identity being in God. And then looking in the book that I read, that I hold dearly, and seeing myself in that book. And that's a whole nother conversation. But knowing that diversity, knowing where my root, my foundation is in God. And that's something that I think through all of our generation, as far as Black folk, so to speak, if I can generalize and stereotypize us, that is something, a constant pillar that has held us together is our faith in God, that at least at some point, it got to get better. I know I didn't say it right, but it has to get better.
Speak your truth, Mr. Bryant. Very well said. Thank you, sir. I believe, Mrs. Castañeda, you had your choose to speak up.
For me, that was an interesting question. And my sister, we call her the family historian. And so with my maiden name, Bohannon, it traces back centuries and back to the antebellum South is what I recall. The Bohannon plantation was in Georgia on land that was settled after Native Americans who were living there were forcibly removed and walked the Trail of Tears. So my ancestors that I know of came from a plantation built by stolen labor on stolen land. She did track back to 1769 Maryland, and ultimately the Bohannon plantation in Coweta County was sold in the 1800s. But again, the original land was removed, stolen from the original Native Americans in our country. She also shared, my sister shared, that we do have two spellings of our names. So we could have friends, neighbors, cousins living near us. There are many branches all over the United States. Somebody that's right around the corner from us that we learned. We also learned through an interesting fact that my son would appreciate is that we are distant cousins with, I believe it's Calvin Megatron Johnson. And he was at our last reunion in Chicago. So it's cool to learn that. I know that we have our family crest. I think she said definitely not Irish, but I think it was Scottish. But she was going to definitely get back to us on that. But it is important to learn our history. While I am nervous with this conversation, I have to speak my truth that I'm nervous because it's a public forum, not a private. And I tend to talk more like in private with smaller groups where everybody can relate and have a safe conversation without feeling like you're being judged. I know that with George Floyd's killing on this summer, it seemed like everybody wanted to be about it and raise awareness and so forth. And then as the months have gone on, it's like we've gone back to a sense of business as usual. So I think that I don't want us in the school system going back to business as usual. I want us to speak out to our legislatures and see about getting our textbooks rewritten and written with truth and so forth, because as teachers, we can't teach what we don't know. And if it's not in our TEKS, if it's not in our history books, then we have that, well, yes, it's Hispanic Heritage Month, or yes, it's Black History Month, but we still have this to teach. So I don't want us to say we're forcing awareness on anybody. I want us to make sure that we are able to integrate it into our learning, into our lessons, into our textbooks. And we can't do that if we continue to just focus on 1 month of Black history. So it should be all year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Castaneda, and thank you for deciding to step up and speak your truth as well. We appreciate you. And for those that don't know Calvin Megatron Johnson, great wide receiver for the Detroit Lions. So just giving that out. So yeah, I know.
Slightly.
Wide receiver, great. I know I heard all the time growing up, Irish was Drew Pearson in our family. But so I'm going to go over here to Ms. Westbrook, because you did talk about the roots of our family. I want to get your thoughts on this topic.
Turn this on, sorry. So when we think about our family, again, as I said earlier, that sometimes Black History Month lights a spark under us to begin to start looking for those of our past and finding ourselves and our ancestors. And lo and behold, you find something, and it's like the greatest thing you've found in a long time. I think when I was in 9th grade, long time ago, I'm gonna date myself, and Roots came out. The most important thing I remembered about that movie, that series, can I say, is when James Earl Jones was playing Alex Haley, and he found the records of his family in the ledger of where they kept the cattle. I can never forget that, because he said, I found you. And it was just so interesting to see how he had been asking everybody. And personally, my family knew him because my aunt was a good friend with his sister, so we knew the family somewhat. And the idea when he came out with what he could find about his family and going all the way back to Africa to the tribe, the area, the people. A lot of us started doing that and saying, what is it that, we could find about our family. My family, for instance, we do know on my father's side that we were able to trace ourselves all the way back to 1865 with a great-grandmother 5 times, great. And her name was Lucinda Boyd, and she was never a slave. Though it was 1865, the war was over, she fell in love with a man who was a slave. Now he was free and they wanted to get married. And her father, the Mr. Boyd, told her if she married him, he never wanted to see her again. So he gave her $100 and a wagon. And she and her new husband left, and they ended up in Palestine, Texas, because in the Bible she read the word Palestine, and just change the wording, and they settled there. So we still have property there right now because of that over the years, and so we get together to be able to talk about this. But imagine the idea of finding family members going back to wherever they came from and being able to make that connection, just to take that puzzle and add a few more pieces to it to try to figure out what's going on. It's just a tremendous feeling overall. And if you haven't seen, if you've not seen Roots, and most people have, but it's long, you got to sit down and watch it. But trust me, him discovering his story was just an absolutely amazing thing. And you felt it just by watching it on TV. So I strongly encourage that. But this idea of family, keep in mind that back in the day when we were segregated, the family, the church, the community, that is what kept everybody together, even through the terrorism. And I say terrorism because 9/11 wasn't just terrorism. We had terrorism way before then, and it was Cullen Powell who pointed that out to us, that the strange fruit, as we were talking about earlier, that was terrorism. And the one thing that held everyone together was the family, the church, the community protecting each other. And so to this day, as we've somewhat lost that a little bit, we're floundering around. And it's not until we connect together and find out that we share this knowledge and we can support each other that things can get better in many instances. And thus, I think that's what happened last summer with the incident that happened with Mr. Floyd. Community started saying, hold on a minute, and everybody started binding and coming together to figure out what we could do to try to make this better. So family, your blood, but family, those people you're connected to because of those ties that make you stronger in order to go forth and do what you need to do.
Well said. Thank you, Ms. Westbrook. We'll go back up to my virtual panelists. Did we have anybody that wanted to speak on this topic that hasn't yet? All right, we're going to move back over here to my left. Anyone? Mr. Goodin.
Yeah, I really like what Ms. Westbrook just said about the people, not just your blood, but the people that you connect to. Because I believe some of my closest friends that are African American, we probably made friends because we were one of the 2 only black kids in the class. Yep. And it almost came down to no matter what we are outside of this classroom, while we in here with just each other, that's family, no matter what. And we may have never called each other family with those exact words, but there was always a connection, especially around February, when the whole class would turn around and look at you, and you were learning along with the class. But there was this expectation of you as the only black kid in the class to know every detail about this subject, front and back. And you sat there as, okay, yeah, I do know more about this from an experience level, but some of this I want to learn about, as well. I need to know more about this with you guys. And I believe that having that quote unquote family in the classroom made that learning experience so much easier. And then also what Ms. Westbrook said about finding that thing that represents your family and the history of your family. I believe a lot of people my age are just now about to start searching for that thing, because we don't realize that how much those things tell us about history and how much those things tell us about the systems that made that history possible and the details that those things hold about where we're from and who we were meant to be. And I love the black family so much because it's always portrayed a certain way. And if you just take a look inside of the black family, it functions in a way that is a lot more inspiring than it's portrayed in the media. And the black family has a lot more than what is portrayed as missing from it. We're always told about what's missing from our black families, how fatherhood is absent, how different things are absent from the black family, but the black family holds so much. And those things, like Ms. Westbrook mentioned, those are the things that the black family holds. And it holds heritage, it holds culture, and it holds answers to who you are and who you're meant to be.
Well said, Mr. Gooden. So before we get to our last audience question, I want to give anybody else that hasn't spoke on this topic an opportunity to give me a 30-second, 45-second comments on it. Mr. Dixon.
So family, to me, learning from mistakes that have happened, and then my own family, I came up with a little mantra, and I'm just going to leave it there after I say it. So family is about trust. Transparent, reliable, unconditional, steady, and thankful. And that's a mantra that I use throughout my life.
Well said, Coach. You can tell you're a coach, and you always have your mantras and your statements that are very well, and they hit home. So thank you, sir. Pastor Curl.
Can't believe you're going to give the pastor 45 seconds. Come on, man.
You can take it.
Come on, man. You know better than that, Dex. Come on. But when I think of the black family, I think strength. I would not be where I am today without my family. When I think about the black family, I think of just power, strength, unity, coming together to persevere through whatever comes our way. There's something in the fabric of the black family that is unique, that was birthed out of slavery, birthed out of the transatlantic slave trade, goes all the way back to Africa. But when I think of the black family, I think strength.
Wow. Thank you. Obviously, there's a lot that we can continue to talk about on this, and I certainly thank the panel for the discussion and diving deep into this and having a real conversation. So we're going to get the second audience participation piece here. So we'll go ahead and get that back up on the screen. And we will have the audience participate with one word to describe this event. Once again, it will be at menti.com. You'll use the code 9022955. We're going to give a moment for the audience to participate, and then we'll get some brief feedback from the panel on that. Okay, we've got some other ones popping up here. Once again, Menti, MENTI.com, MENTI.com, and use the code 9022955. All right, we've got a few of them coming in here. Wow. Wow, some really, really good words there. Appreciate the lexicon of our audience there as well. All right, so I think that's looks like it's stopping there. So I'm gonna have the panel go ahead and use your paddles real quick, and we're gonna get some very brief responses from any of those who'd like to reflect on what they see. All right, I'm looking up at my virtual panelist. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started here. We'll start with, okay, keep them up for a minute. Keep up your paddles. All right, we're gonna just make a round real quick. Give me some quick feedback on it. First, we'll start with you, Miss Wilson.
I just want to say I really enjoyed all the panelists, and the word that comes to me is honest. I appreciate everybody's honesty. So that's my word.
Wonderful. Miss Castaneda.
Awareness, educational. Thank you as well for having us here. One of my teammates has knowledge is power on one of her Bitmojis for Schoology, and I grew up with that. Knowledge is power to all of our young kids and adults out there. Knowledge is power. Nobody can take any of that away from you. Read, 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 and read some more. Know your truth, speak your truth, learn your history.
Mr. Taylor.
Thank you. I guess the words that stuck out to me were open, needed, and necessary. I think it's important that everybody, remain open and really digest information and be just keep your ear out and try to learn as much as possible from people around them, from their family, from their friends, and the community, and just the history that we hold so dear.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Mr. Bryant.
Thank you. Great panel. Thank you for the invite. The word that sticks out to me is progressive. We're moving and we're not stopping. We're progressive.
Well said, sir. I'm going to start here at the end of the panel. Mr. Dixon.
Not done is the words that come to my mind. This was an awesome experience. It opened up a lot of things inside of me, especially about this community. It's very fruitful to see this, and I thank you for the invite.
Mr. Griffith, brief reflection?
Oh, wait.
Oh, you're good.
Oh, I'm sorry. I saw voice for voiceless and educational, and, it's so true because there's so many other perspectives that aren't being taken into play whenever learning about this or even, talking to people throughout time. And I just think that, a setting like this just allows for more openness and open-mindedness for, education and stuff like that.
Well said. Thank you, Mr. Griffith. Thank you for being here. Mr. Goodin.
The word I chose was inspiring, especially after the question that was proposed in the second video of whether Black History Month was relevant or not still. I liked everyone's responses and how inspiring everyone was that it was still necessary, and how firm they were in those responses. That was inspiring. And the event itself was also very inspiring because in the two towns that I grew up in, I can't really imagine something like this happening that can be honest and truthful. So the fact that we're all sitting here right now is inspiring to me.
Well, thank you, Mr. Gooden. Ms. Westbrook.
The word that popped up to me was thought-provoking, and the other one was insightful in regards to what the community thought of this event.
Fantastic. Thank you for being here, Ms. Westbrook. Mr. Mitchell.
I drilled down on the word needed because in my mind, this is something that is not just a fun thing to do in free time, but is critical. It's become critical for me. I mean, honestly, I'm trying to imagine what it was like before this last year, and I don't want to go back, and I don't think that we need to go back. But if we're not continuing to engage each other in honest, robust dialogue, progression is not easy. And I thought it was interesting that the last one of these that we did, I didn't speak very much, but I gave some reflection on my name. Being named Travis with middle name Washington, something I had taken great pride in my whole life, and how this year for the first time I learned more about my history, and I learned about the people I was named after, and the good and the bad, and I never had learned that before. But the community had such an interesting reaction to that. When the people that were watching that had feedback for me, I got a little of everything. Certainly folks thinking that I was being disrespectful to my lineage and to Texas as a state, just for learning more and saying factual things about those times. So I'm okay with it. That's all I know is I'm okay with it. I'd rather be here. I'd rather be engaging and learning. I'm still proud of my name. I'm still proud of where I'm from. And so without these dialogues, like I'm not there, you know, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Appreciate you speaking your truth. Thank you, sir. Pastor Curl, I'll leave it with you. You can wrap this up.
Grew up in deep East Texas in the 80s. Very familiar with Palestine. It's not, the Bible is Palestine, but in East Texas, Palestine. I have to go through Crockett to get to my hometown, so go through Crockett very regularly. But the word for me would be necessary, and someone else said that earlier, especially in the light of our current climate of our nation and the hatred, the things that have been stirred up. I think that dialogues like this, that are open, transparent, are necessary, even if we agree to disagree. But it's necessary. There's no way for healing to begin if we don't have very honest dialogue, until we begin to talk about some of the things, like I said earlier, the good and the bad things that have happened. But we have to have the dialogue. We've got to be willing to sit down across the table from someone that does not look like us and share our experiences and talk through, this is why I feel the way that I feel, and come to a reasoning and understanding that that's why you hold that perspective. But let me share with you this perspective that you may not have ever been exposed to. And so I was blessed to be able to participate in the one this past summer. I got invited back again, so I must have did something okay. So I'll see if I get invited back to the next one. But this would not have happened in my hometown in Deep East Texas, not even today. So for us to be doing this here in Kyle, it makes me proud to be a resident of this community and be called to this area for such a time as this. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, Pastor. I knew you'd wrap us up really good. Thank you, everyone, for the audience that is here today. We had a very good showing online, so the number of people were watching online. I will certainly be watching this again because it is tough to be in this position, and I certainly want to watch this again and hear some of the great things that were said by this panel. Oh, my goodness. Can we get a round of applause here in the gallery for our panel today? Thank you so much. It really warms my heart to be able to do this event and have the support of my fellow council members and mayor. Have a couple of council members here today as well. The support of the community. I can't thank the staff enough, our wonderful communications department, our wonderful IT department. Thank you so much. Y'all heard me saying Grant working the cameras and different things back there as well. This has been a wonderful event. I just want to let everybody know, I know we're over time by 5 minutes, but just to wrap this up, this is the first of 3 events we'll be doing this year. We will do another one in June to continue with our inaugural event that we did last Juneteenth. And then we will be doing a 3rd event in the beginning of October to align with Hispanic Heritage Month. So stay tuned to that. I'd also like everyone to look at their screen and see if you're interested in being a future panelist or send a suggestion for any future events and topics of conversations. Please email me, and my email is there at dellison@cityofkyle.com. I'd love to hear from you once again on suggestions of topics, on future panelists, if you'd want to be one yourself, or if you have an idea of someone in the community that you think would be great for this panel, we'd love to hear from that. So once again, thank you again to the great panel. Thank you for the great discussion. Thank you for your candor and your honesty. These things would not go as well as they would if it wasn't for the panel. And so thank you all so much. Thank you, City of Kyle. Thank you all for watching. Happy Black History Month.